live on HDNet. From Launch Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis.
The final launch of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to the International Space Station. This is NASA on HDNet. Now reporting from Cape Canaveral, here's correspondent Greg Dobbs.
And good afternoon in most of the U.S. and Canada. Good morning on the West Coast. There she is live on your screen, Space Shuttle Atlantis, poised to launch less than 20 minutes from now. And as one of her astronauts told me last week in Houston, there's a sense of history here because after 31 liftoffs, 31 successful flights in the last 25 years, today's for Atlantis is probably the last. And then when Discovery and Endeavour fly later this year, it'll probably be the last flight for them as well. And I say probably, but for the unlikely chance either of an extension of the Space Shuttle program, but that's not considered very likely, or an emergency rescue mission for one of those last two flights on the schedule later this year. But otherwise, this is the beginning of the long anticipated, long lamented end of the Space Shuttle program. Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Dobbs. You'll see on the countdown clock over my shoulder that it shows T-minus 9 minutes and counting. That is the last scheduled hold in the countdown. They expect to do it. It's a chance to verify all the computer systems on board and in the firing room. Also a chance for all the teams involved with the launch to get back in sync if any has fallen behind. Only a few minutes from now, the launch director will poll his teams, and we'll take you there. And at this point, the only worrisome weather is not overhead here in Florida, but rather at all three backup abort landing sites in Europe. In each case, it's been going between what they call red and green, meaning no go or go. So we'll hope at least one, that's what they need, will be green at the time of launch, and they can anticipate that about 30 minutes later, if they have to land in Europe, that they can land at least at one of those sites. As for all things electronic and mechanical and technical and cryogenic, everything's been going smoothly. They've had one small problem that came up in the last half hour. They found a malfunction with a ball bearing in the payload bay, but we expect that they are taking care of it now and that they will go ahead and launch. So if all goes well, they'll restart that countdown clock at almost 11 minutes after the hour. And then 9 minutes after that, at 2:20 and 9 seconds to be precise, Eastern Daylight Time, Atlantis will lift off on what is in all probability her final mission. And you see her there on the pad right now, and her mission is, in fact, to deliver a Russian module to the International Space Station. This is the first time that the United States has actually done this for the Russians. This module will double as a docking compartment on the space station, and it'll be a room for scientific research. And on one of the spacewalks, they're going to install on the exterior of the space station another piece of cargo that Atlantis is carrying. It's some critical long-term hardware for the International Space Station. And they're going to, it's a big mission, they're going to change out 6 batteries, and these are not just double A's. They're about 400 pounds apiece. Each one is about the size of a very large suitcase, and this will help enable the space station to survive for the next 10 years. Now, the crew of the Space Shuttle Atlantis suited up about 4 hours ago and left their quarters to get on board Atlantis. And the crew boasts a distinction that I've never seen or heard before, namely, and we've covered something like 20 launches like this, everyone on the crew is a veteran of spaceflight. There's not a first-time flyer. As a matter of fact, that's true for all 3 of the last 3 flights scheduled in this program. They're all veterans, no more first-time flyers. And in a moment, we're going to show you how they looked as they left their quarters about 3.5 hours ago. When they left their quarters, you see them, the pilot and the commander in front. They're all men on the crew, by the way. All are married, 12 kids between them. 4 of these men are military veterans, 3 Navy, 1 Air Force, and they're an educated bunch, 2 degrees from MIT, 2 from the Naval Academy. All 6 of these guys have advanced graduate degrees, including 2 PhDs. And in the truck, I'd like you to stop the tape for a second. Stop the tape if you can, because I want to tell a little story. You'll see that 5 of these guys are roughly the same height. They're all fairly tall. And then there's Garrett Reisman. You see him 4th from the left. He's really pretty easy to identify because he's not as tall as the rest of them. I asked him in Houston a week and a half ago when we interviewed him how tall he is, and he laughed and he said, I'm 5'4.5", which is why he said he looks forward to his time in space, because he told me you grow in space. And he would know a couple of years ago, Garrett spent 3 months living on the space station. He said he expects to be, he put it maybe 5'6" for the next couple of weeks, and he said he's looking forward to that. Well, now we'll go back to a live shot of Space Shuttle Atlantis, and you see the flame trench running from left to right. And her crew is strapped in there at the top, and they've been there for about 3 hours now. And I'll tell you a little about the history of this ship. This will be the 11th flight of Atlantis to the International Space Station. Now, before she started flying there, she was the first space shuttle ever to dock with the Russian Mir space station. That was back in the year 1995, before our two nations partnered on the International Space Station. Atlantis also was the last station to grapple and work on the incomparable Hubble Space Telescope on its final service mission. That was just last year. But here, maybe most significant about Atlantis, it was from this ship that two important interplanetary satellites were launched back in 1989. First was the Magellan probe to Venus, which provided the first detailed map we've ever seen of Venus, and then the Galileo probe, which traveled for 6 years to reach Jupiter and study its moons. Now, last night I happened to have dinner with the pilot of that mission on Atlantis that sent Galileo on its way to Jupiter. His name is Mike McCulley, and he said to me, we were only in space on that mission for 6 days, but the mission lasted more than a dozen years, because that's how long the satellite around Jupiter studying its moons stayed alive. Now, also, having just mentioned how long the U.S. has now partnered with Russia, an old enemy, the Soviet Union, last week at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, I talked about this partnership with the commander of Atlantis on this mission. He's Naval Captain and F-18 pilot Ken Ham. Does it amaze you that we even do it with the Russians? I mean, would you have imagined this kind of thing not too long ago?
No, I still have not difficulty, but it is striking, because I was a professional naval aviator when the Cold War was going on, and part of my job at that time was to create strike plans on how to.
Okay, we're going to come out of this right now and go to the firing room, because the launch director is pulling his teams. This is where they finally say go or no go.
The rest of the ISS processing team will go.
Copy that. Thanks, Bill. KC Safety and Mission Assurance.
KC Safety and Mission Assurance, let's go, Mike.
Thank you, Mark. Range weather.
Weather has no constraints for launch, Mike.
Copy. Ops Manager.
Mike, the MMT's in good shape. Shuttle program is go to let you launch Atlantis.
Okay, copy that. Thank you. Atlantis Launch Director.
Go, sir.
Okay, Huck, on behalf of all the manufacturing, processing, flight, and launch teams that have worked on Atlantis since March of 1980, I'd like to wish you all good luck, Godspeed, and have a little fun up there.
Thanks, Mike. Those are great words. And like you said, there's 1,000 of folks out there that have taken care of this bird for a long time. Right now, a special thanks to Orbiter for getting us off the pad today. And we're going to take her on our 30-second flight. And if you don't mind, we'll take her out of the barn and make a few more laps around the planet. Nove Rastiet, Prihodit, na Stanciu. Payekli.
Thanks, Huck. I understood all that. And we'll try to get you out of here on time.
Good, man.
And NTD Launch Director, you are clear to launch Atlantis.
Copy that, Launch Director.
Well, there you have it. The teams that watch the weather here at the Kennedy Space Center say it's a go. The teams that watch the weather at the 3 transatlantic abort landing sites, and they've never had to use one, by the way, but they have 3 of them manned just in case. At least one of them says it's a go, which means if they have to abort once they've left the environs of Florida, they can do so. And whatever the problem was with a ball bearing, that has also been solved. At least what they do is file a problem report, and they do it very quickly, and then take a look at reasons to justify the problem, and in any event, they figure it's safe to go. This is a shot from the Vehicle Assembly Building, a little over 3 miles from the launch pad, from 55 stories high, and it's a shot from which later in this broadcast you will see Space Shuttle Atlantis rise toward the heavens, specifically toward low Earth orbit, about 220 miles above the Earth, where she'll join the International Space Station. And at the moment of launch, by the way, the International Space Station, when Atlantis launches just a little more than 9 minutes from now, we'll show you when they resume the count in a minute or so. The space station will be pretty far south over the South Pacific, well south of the equator. That's roughly its position, as a matter of fact, when they dock 44 hours later, that being about 10 o'clock Eastern Time Sunday morning. Space Shuttle Atlantis. There are a number of dignitaries here at the Kennedy Space Center, as there always are, and probably the two best known are the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America, Robert Gates. He is here. And TV talker David Letterman is here, as well as a number of members of Congress. The head, as a matter of fact, of Russia's space agency called Roscosmos is also here to watch the launch of Space Shuttle Endeavour. As you know, the Russians carry their own astronauts, as well as many of ours, and Europeans and Canadians and Japanese, to and from the space station. And come the end of the Space Shuttle program, they will do it exclusively. But what we don't do on the shuttle is carry Russians to the station. They take care of that themselves. But the head of the Russian Space Agency is here right now. This is the shot in the White Room. That is the hatch through which each of the 6 astronauts got into the space shuttle all about 3 hours and more ago. And that White Room will always look like it's being burned to a crisp. It will be pulled away. It's still, you can see to the left of the cockpit as you look at that picture, that white box just looks like it's hanging toward the front of the aircraft. That is the White Room, but that will swing away in a few minutes. And the astronauts will then hope that just a couple of minutes later, they're on their way to space. Now they're going to resume the clock.
3, 2, 1, mark.
T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
CLS auto sequence has been initiated.
The ground launch sequencer, the primary computer here in the firing room, is now in control of the countdown. We'll be checking over 1,000 parameters in the launch sequence for Space Shuttle Atlantis in the next 9 minutes.
Okay, now let's tell you a bit about the brave 6-man crew that's about to ride a 600-foot-long, 6,000-degree flame into space. And there you see the first one aboard. He's the commander, Ken Ham. He's a captain in the United States Navy, 45 years old, born in New Jersey, married with 2 children. Like the pilot who will sit to his right, he flew F-18s off of aircraft carriers, a very experienced pilot. He flew missions, as a matter of fact, in combat over North Iraq and over Bosnia. Ken is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He loves to ski, both on snow and water. He's a sky and scuba diver as well. Next up, to go in, Mission Specialist 1, Steve Bowen, known as Steve-O. He's a captain as well in the Navy. He'll be a spacewalker, 46 years old. He's from Massachusetts, married with 3 children. He graduated from the Naval Academy and got a degree from MIT, but here's his real distinction. He's the first and only submarine officer ever selected as an astronaut. In his spaceflight experience, by the way, he flew on Endeavour 2 years ago. They helped expand the living quarters of the U.S. Space Station, the International Space Station, to accommodate 6 astronauts. There you see, by the way, the commander, Ken Ham, getting strapped in. His call sign is Hawk, and I asked him about that. He said he didn't even understand it for a long time until soon someone explained to him Hawk as in ham hock. He had a ham sandwich for lunch, as a matter of fact, today. Makes sense. There's the pilot getting ready in the White Room, Tony Antonelli. He's the 3rd of the 3 Navy guys, a commander in the Navy. He's 42 years old, the 2nd youngest. He's married with 2 children, born in Detroit. And like his commander to his left in the cockpit, he flew F-18s off of aircraft carriers. Told me, as a matter of fact, that the difference between going off a carrier and going off the ground in the shuttle is that a catapult launch just lasts for a few minutes, but the shuttle launch lasts for 8.5. Now here's Piers Sellers. He's a U.S. citizen, British born, 55, the oldest on the crew. He has a Ph.D. in biometeorology, a very smart man. He's a veteran of 2 space flights. All the others are veterans of 1. And he flew in 2002 and 2006. And now, if all goes well, he can add the year 2010 to his resume. Now, Garrett Reisman. Garrett Reisman's the one who's a little shorter than all the rest, you'll recall. He's the kid on the crew as well, 42 years old, a native of New Jersey, a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering from Caltech, and he's also married. He's a skier, a snowboarder, a rock climber, a mountaineer, a canyoneer, a scuba diver. He does it all. He launched aboard Atlantis and, aboard Endeavour, and came back on Discovery from 3 months on the space station a couple of years ago, so he'll now have ridden all 3 once Atlantis launches. And now you see Mike Good. He's a colonel in the Air Force, the only Air Force man, a retired colonel. His handle on the crew is Bueno, because the name Good means bueno, is bueno in Spanish. He's married with 3 children from Broadview Heights, Ohio, 47 years old. He's got a couple of degrees, a master's and a bachelor's from Notre Dame. In the Air Force, he flew and tested the B-2 stealth bomber. And the distinction of his previous mission, which was also on this ship Atlantis, is that it was the 5th and final mission to service the Hubble Space telescope. So there you have the crew, and as with every crew, a very brave crew indeed. Now, when Atlantis launches, there are going to be a lot of people watching here on the ground. I'm wondering if the control room can go to the tweet cam, we're calling it. There you have some of the tweeters, and here's the story. There's something like 20 NASA-related networks on Twitter now, and active users, some months ago, were invited to apply to be here at the Kennedy Space Center for this launch and to tweet about everything they experienced. About 1,000 people applied, and these are some of the 150, I think it was, who were accepted. So those are the people we see on our tweet cam, but at the time of launch, they're going to be tweeting like mad. Now, I mentioned when we were talking about the crew the fact that Steve Bowen is the first submarine officer, in fact, the only submarine officer ever selected as an astronaut. Well, about 10 or 11 days ago in Houston, I asked Steve about the similarities and differences between a sub and a shuttle, and he got into something that a lot of us probably think about but don't really know about. So listen to this.
I used to make sort of a flip joke about the fact that when I get to space, the view's going to be a lot better, but the food's going to be a lot worse. And that is true. I can attest to that. Space station does have the distinct odor of a submarine, or at least it's getting a similar odor, which may not be a good thing in many people's mind. But that's what it struck me when I crossed over to the space station. But there's some things that are
I'm going to stop you there,
okay.
Only because people never talk about that.
What, the odor?
It's a bunch of people who don't get to take the kinds of showers we take down here on Earth, in the shuttle, in the station.
And the air is all recycled. And you know, there's just things in the atmosphere. I mean, you know, the atmosphere is fine. It just has an odor to it. Now, hopefully it hasn't got any more distinct since I left last time. We'll find out when I get there.
Well, twice as many people.
Yeah, that's true.
That is Steve Bowen, the first and only submarine instructor in history to fly on a space shuttle. Not the first submariner, but he's the first submarine officer. Before we show you shots of the shuttle and listen to the final ship-to-ground communication, let me just mention this. The main engines, the three main engines on the space shuttle, take extremes greater than any mechanical system ever invented by man. So we'll show you pictures of this, and as you look at these pictures, think about a few facts. Number one, they burn more than 500,000 gallons of fuel, and that's enough to tank about 35,000 automobiles. The temperatures inside the main engines run at about 6,000 degrees, which is about hotter, actually, than the melting point of iron. The output of each engine is the equivalent to the output, think about this, of 4 Hoover dams. And the turbo pumps in the engines, they rotate at 35,000 turns per minute, which is almost 600 revolutions per second. So now we'll show you shots of Space Shuttle Atlantis as she sits on the pad, and they are removing the vent. We call it the beanie cap, which is a good sign. That means she's ready to go.
OTC, that is in work.
T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
TLS is go for ET LH2 pressurization.
Activating the cameras on the solid rocket boosters.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
Sound suppression water system is now armed.
One minute.
Ground launch sequencer will hand off to Atlantis' onboard flight computers at T-minus 31 seconds. About 15 seconds from now. Solid rocket booster flight data recorders are activated. T-minus 31 seconds. The handoff has occurred.
25.
Solid rocket booster nozzle gimbal check. Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system activated. T-minus 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And 0 and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, reaching the crest of its historic achievements in space.
Houston, Atlantis is in a roll.
Roger, roll.
Houston is now controlling. The roll maneuver is complete. Atlantis is in a heads-down position on course for a 51.6 degree, 136 by 36 statute mile orbit. And the 3 main engines on Atlantis have now been throttled down to 72% of rated thrust as the orbiter prepares to pass through the area of maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle in the lower atmosphere. The engine's now beginning to throttle back up.
Atlantis, you are go at throttle up.
Copy, go at throttle up.
All 3 engines looking really good, back at full throttle now at liftoff. The fully fueled shuttle, boosters, and external tank weighed 4.5 million pounds. It now has burned half of that liftoff weight in propellant. 1 minute, 30 seconds into the flight. All 3 auxiliary power units that provide hydraulic power to the orbiter's systems in good shape, as are the fuel cells, providing electricity to all of the systems on board. Atlantis is already 19 miles in altitude, downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 20 miles, traveling 2,500 miles per hour. Coming up on staging, the point at which the twin solid rocket boosters burn out and separate from the orbiter. Booster separation confirmed. The onboard guidance system has done its job of settling out any of the dispersions that have been introduced at the booster separation.
Yeah.
Atlantis' performance thus far is exactly as planned as Atlantis heads into orbit, flying heads down, wings level into a historic sunset on its 32nd mission.
Atlantis, you are 2-engine TOW.
When those two-engine TOW means that she could make it across the Atlantic if she loses an engine, which hasn't happened and only once ever did. But there we are, fewer than 3 minutes into the flight. When those solid rocket boosters flew off, by the way, which was 2 minutes and a few seconds into the flight, she was already traveling at 3,600 miles per hour. She's now passing the 5,000 mile per hour mark. And that shot, of course, is from the camera that is firmly fixed to the external fuel tank at the bottom of your screen. You see the belly of the orbiter itself, the belly of Atlantis, probably on her final mission, at the top of the screen. And at 8 minutes and 23 seconds into the mission, they do something called MECO, main engine cutoff. NASA is chock full of acronyms. And 6 seconds later, she has 0 thrust and is literally flying at 17,500 miles per hour in space. And now we're going to show you a replay of the launch that took place fewer than 4 minutes ago. She's already on her way to 5,000 miles per hour in speed. And here it is again. As you watch, consider these statistics. The vehicle going uphill right now is as tall as a 19-story building. She weighed more than 4.5 million pounds at launch, but the moment she takes off, she's losing fuel as fast as can be. Accelerating from 0 to 17,500 miles per hour in 8.5 minutes time. This is the shot taken from right next to where we are here with HDNet. This is the way I see it. It is, of course, unlikely that there will ever again be a spacecraft like this, at least not for generations, a ship that launches like a rocket and lands like an airplane. And it's unlikely because since the Columbia disaster, 2003, when a piece of foam from the external fuel tank peeled off and hit the orbiter, NASA is determined never again to put human beings below the very top of any rocket lifting off. This is the shot from the vehicle assembly building where the whole stack there went from a horizontal position to vertical. A little over 3 miles from the launch pad. You see on the right those tracks heading toward the launch pad. The crawler at about half a mile per hour carries the shuttle from the launch, from the vehicle assembly building to the pad itself. It's about a 6-hour trip. This is from our South Beach tracker, an old World War II gun turret. It's the equivalent of a telescope on top. We are now 6 minutes into the flight. You're watching the launch about 6 minutes ago, but now Space Shuttle Atlantis is traveling about 9,000 miles per hour, as we call rising from the Phoenix ashes. And if she had to at this point, she could still make Europe on just one engine, but again, I say that's only a hypothetical because all three are firing on all cylinders. Now, as we wait for main engine cutoff, where thanks to the camera on the external fuel tank, you'll actually see the orbiter peeling off, or probably more accurately, the external fuel tank peeling off from the bottom of the orbiter, and the orbiter flies into zero G. We'll take one more look at this stunning mid-afternoon launch of Space Shuttle Atlantis. In all likelihood, after 31 launches, now 32 actually, in 25 years, very likely her very last. This is, by the way, the White Room. We always show you this scene because watch what happens at liftoff. The crew on board this rocket, which is at the top of your screen, will turn in for their sleep about 6 hours from now and then be awakened for their first full day in space a little after 4 tomorrow morning Eastern time. They've been adjusting their sleep schedules for about a week to conform to the current schedule of the space station to which they're headed. And then about 44 hours from now, that would be Sunday morning, after racing toward their rendezvous with the space station at 17,500 miles per hour, they will join the 6 crew members there. Right now, 2 Americans, 3 Russians, 1 Japanese astronaut, who for a few months are making their home on the space station. And then after 11 days, 18 hours, and 23 minutes in space, Atlantis, weather permitting, is due to come home to Florida to land for the last time ever. That would be Wednesday at about 8:45 in the morning, the 26th. As we wait for main engine cutoff, a quick personal note. This is the 19th shuttle launch we've covered here on HDNet, and we couldn't have done any of them without one guy who's gotten us on the air almost single-handed, but for about half a dozen other people, and his name is Jeff Carmen, and today is his birthday. So for all of us at HDNet, and for every one of you to whom Jeff has given you the best seat in the house, there is separation. There's the separation. Happy birthday to Jeff. Thanks to NASA for a terrific display of birthday fireworks. And now, on the behalf of all of us at HDNet, good luck to everyone at NASA, in space, and on the ground. And to the rest of you, thank you for watching one of the last shuttle launches you're ever likely to see. Only 2 more on the schedule. So here's one last view, actually 4 of them, of what is in all probability the very last launch of Space Shuttle Atlantis. I'm Greg Dobbs. Have a good day.